Have you ever witnessed a single act of kindness spark a chain reaction no one saw coming? Picture a humble diner at dawn, a dedicated black waitress quietly placing a warm plate of food in front of a timid girl who slips in and out like a shadow day after day. This small gesture goes unnoticed by everyone until one morning, 4 gleaming SUVs line up outside the diner, turning the sleepy street into a stage for a revelation. What secret could this girl have hidden? And how would the waitress's unassuming generosity reshape their lives in the most shocking way? Naomi Carter had spent her life rising before the sun. At 32, she worked the early shift at Johnson's Diner in Atlanta, modest, worn, and full of character. Each morning, she arrived by 4:30 a.m., cleaning booths, prepping coffee, and quietly bringing warmth to the sleepy restaurant. She wasn't rich. Rent was tight. Her old Chevy coughed on cold mornings, and unfinished college loans lingered. Still, Naomi carried herself with grace and purpose. Her kindness a legacy from her grandmother, who raised her to believe. Never let the world's meanness steal your kindness. Customers loved her for her memory, her smile, and her silent generosity, like slipping toast to those short on cash. The job wasn't glamorous, but it gave Naomi a place to make the world a little softer, one plate at a time. A few weeks back, Naomi noticed a young girl slipping into the diner. The girl, who couldn't have been more than 12 or 13, had dark hair that hung lank around her pale face and wore a slightly oversized hoodie. She almost always appeared around 6:15 in the morning, just before the diner's initial rush. She'd quietly open the door slide into the farthest booth by the window and stare out at the street with nervous, fidgeting hands. Naomi, accustomed to greeting new faces, warmly approached the girl the first time with her order pad. "Hi, sweetheart. You ready to order?" she asked in a hushed tone, leaning in with a gentle smile. The girl just shook her head. Her eyes darted around, never meeting Naomi's. She seemed so skittish, as if the slightest noise might send her running out into the street. "Okay," Naomi said softly. "Just let me know if you need anything." "Okay." The girl nodded, but remained silent. After a couple of days, Naomi noticed the girl never really ordered food. She also noticed the girl's shoulders twitch whenever she saw the diner manager, a strict and sometimes surly man named Dale, pass by. The girl looked down, focusing intently on the table's surface, as if hoping no one would notice her. After the 4th or 5th morning of this, Naomi's curiosity grew into concern. She recognized signs of hunger, the way the girl's eyes followed plates of bacon and eggs going by, how she'd inhale the aroma of sizzling sausage. Naomi knew that expression. She'd worn it herself in childhood, when money was tight and dinner wasn't guaranteed. So one morning, Naomi took a quiet gamble. Instead of waiting for an order, she brought over a small plate with scrambled eggs, toast, and a side of bacon. Setting it gently on the table, she said, "There was a bit extra. Sometimes the cook makes a plate that goes uneaten. Thought maybe you'd be hungry." The girl didn't look up, but muttered a barely audible, "Thank you." She ate with such fervor that Naomi felt a pang in her chest. The girl was starving and clearly alone. Naomi's protective instincts kicked in at once. From that day on, every morning, the girl appeared. Naomi found a way to place something warm in front of her, always with the same story: kitchen made too much, or we had an extra order. No one picked up. The quiet girl never ate all at once. She'd pick at the food in tiny bites, as though she wanted to savor every crumb, or perhaps stretch it out to last longer. She never said more than a word or two, but Naomi could sense her silent gratitude in the way her body seemed to relax once she had food in front of her. It didn't take long for rumors to start among the other waitresses and staff. Sharon, a waitress in her late 40s, with teased blonde hair, whispered to Naomi one afternoon, "Why are you feeding that girl for free every day? It's not exactly good for business." Naomi just shrugged, refusing to engage. She had no illusions about her position. She earned tips mostly, and the diner's management took notice of wasted food. But she couldn't stand watching a child go hungry, so she continued making sure to do it as discreetly as possible. Some days, Naomi would bring a small backpack with items from her own kitchen, an extra protein bar, an apple or a fruit cup. She'd slip it to the girl, who would tuck it away in her hoodie with a cautious glance toward the windows. Naomi tried to learn the girl's name. At one point, she said, "I'm Naomi. I've seen you here a couple times now. Mind if I ask your name?" The girl gripped the fork in her hand, so tightly that her knuckles turned white. She looked down at the plate, bit her lip, and whispered, "Daisy." Then she returned to her silent eating. For Naomi, just getting a name was a victory. She repeated it softly. "Daisy. That's a lovely name." Though Daisy's visits became routine. Naomi never pressed too hard. She only asked general questions like, "How's school?" or "You doing okay?" Daisy responded with curt nods or shrugged shoulders. She never quite opened up about why she was alone, why she seemed to come out of nowhere, or where she disappeared to. Afterward, Dale Nichols, the diner manager, was a tall, angular man with a perpetual scowl etched into his features. He wore a stained apron and often reeked of cigarettes. He was old-fashioned in the worst ways, frequently criticizing Naomi's easy kindness or complaining about the riffraff they sometimes attracted. In the early hours, Naomi tried to fly under his radar, but her daily generosity toward Daisy did not go unnoticed. One afternoon, after the breakfast rush, Dale cornered Naomi in the narrow hallway leading to the kitchen. His voice was sharp as he said, "You keep feeding that kid for free. It's coming out of your pay." Naomi's eyes flashed with concern. "Dale, please. She's just a kid. Looks like she doesn't have much. If it's a cost issue, I'll pay for it myself. I don't care if you pay for it or not." Dale snapped. "This is a business, not a charity. We start giving out handouts, we'll have half the street bums knocking on the door." Naomi swallowed the urge to argue. She needed this job, as meager as the paycheck was. "Understood," she replied, forcing calm into her voice. "I won't cause any trouble." He let out a derisive snort. "Good, keep it that way." Then he stomped off, leaving Naomi fuming. She couldn't imagine turning Daisy away, but she couldn't ignore Dale's threat either. Still, her resolve to help Daisy only grew stronger. One morning, Naomi noticed a bruise peeking out from the edge of Daisy's hoodie sleeve. When the girl reached for her fork, the sleeve rose slightly, revealing a purplish-yellow patch on her wrist. Naomi's heart skipped a beat. That was no everyday bump or scrape. It looked more like a handprint, Daisy. "Are you okay?" Naomi asked softly, trying not to sound alarmed. The girl froze. She quickly yanked her sleeve down and hid her wrist under the table. She nodded without meeting Naomi's eyes. Naomi wanted to ask more, wanted to pull the girl aside and demand an explanation. But she knew how easily this fragile trust could break. So she let it be for the moment, gently squeezing Daisy's shoulder before returning to work. That afternoon, Naomi made a secret call to a local shelter. She knew she had volunteered there a few times through the Salvation Army's outreach program. She asked for advice, explaining that she suspected a young girl might be homeless or in a dangerous home situation. The staff offered her resources, telling her what signs to look for and the steps she might take if the situation escalated. Naomi tucked that information away, determined to keep an eye on Daisy. She also started making more discreet inquiries among the regulars to see if anyone recognized the girl. Nobody seemed to know her or recall a missing child that fit her description. It was as if Daisy had materialized from nowhere. In the midst of Naomi's concern, tensions at Johnson's diner were reaching a boiling point. Business had been slow. The place was losing customers to newer, trendier breakfast spots. Mr. Johnson was anxious, worried about finances. Dale was in an even fouler mood than usual, snapping at servers over minor mistakes. Sharon had started complaining about her tips drying up. Amid all this turmoil, Naomi's daily act of kindness seemed like a glaring anomaly. Dale watched her like a hawk, while Mr. Johnson tried to stay out of the drama, but occasionally pulled Naomi aside with fatherly advice. "Kid, keep your head low. Times are tough. You don't want to rock the boat." Naomi nodded, but found it hard not to notice that Daisy's presence might be putting her job at risk. Yet each time she contemplated stopping the free meals, an image of Daisy's fearful eyes and bruised wrist filled her mind. She refused to abandon the girl. One evening after closing time, Sharon approached Naomi in the parking lot. Under the flickering streetlight, the blonde waitress leaned on Naomi's beat-up Chevy arms, crossed. "Heard Dale talking about letting you go, if you keep giving that girl free food." Sharon said, her voice a mixture of exasperation and genuine concern. Naomi sighed. "Yeah, I figured." Sharon shook her head. "Times are rough for all of us. We can't afford to lose our jobs, honey. You got to think about yourself sometimes." "I appreciate your concern," Naomi replied softly. "But if you saw the way she looks, I can't just stop." Sharon rolled her eyes, but her expression softened. "Sometimes I wish I had your heart, Naomi, but be careful." A week later, Naomi noticed Daisy's hoodie was torn at the seam near the shoulder, revealing a small patch of skin and another bruise. This time it looked fresh, an angry shade of blue and purple. Daisy winced when Naomi touched her shoulder lightly, almost dropping the fork she was holding. "Daisy, please." Naomi whispered, her voice filled with concern. "I need to know if you're safe. If someone is hurting you, I can help." Daisy trembled, tears welling in her eyes. She managed a choked whisper. "Don't, please." They said, "I can't tell anyone who said." But the girl clammed up again. She shook her head, tears rolling down her cheeks, and returned to her food. Naomi's thoughts whirled with dark possibilities. An abusive parent, a dangerous foster situation, or a runaway scenario. She wanted to scoop Daisy up, drive her to a safe shelter or the police station, but she feared pushing the girl too far, scaring her away for good. That evening, Naomi couldn't sleep. She kept staring at the ceiling of her small apartment, envisioning Daisy wandering unsafe streets at night. She resolved to do more. She jotted down the name of a supportive detective she knew from a local community event, Detective Linda Harris of the Atlanta Police Department. If Daisy's bruises appeared again, or if Daisy went missing altogether, Naomi would reach out for official help. 2 days later, Daisy didn't show up, nor did she appear the next day or the one after. Naomi's anxiety grew with each passing dawn. She found herself scanning the parking lot, hoping to spot that familiar hoodie slip through the door. On the 3rd day of Daisy's absence, Naomi feared the worst. She decided to speak to Detective Harris. She excused herself during her break and called Harris, explaining the situation. In coded detail, she wanted to help a possible underage runaway with signs of abuse, but had few details. Harris thanked her for the tip and promised to keep an ear out. However, without a full name or more specific information, There was only so much the police could do. As if on cue, Daisy reappeared the very next morning. Her hoodie was even more frayed, and her eyes were rimmed with red from crying. Naomi barely suppressed her sigh of relief. She rushed to Daisy's booth with a plate of pancakes and fruit, gently setting it down. "Thank God you're okay," Naomi breathed, leaning in close. "I was so worried. Where were you?" Daisy shrugged, tears threatening to spill again. She mumbled, "It's not safe anymore. They might be watching." Her voice was low and shaky. "Who's they?" Naomi asked, trembling from fear for the girl. Daisy's reply was cut short when Dale stomped over, scowling. He pointed a finger at Daisy. "Kid, you can't keep loitering without ordering something. This ain't a free soup kitchen." Naomi tried to intervene. "She's a paying customer. Dale, I told you, I'll cover her meal if it bothers you that much." Dale snarled. "Then I'll be taking it out of your paycheck. I'm not losing a single cent of profit on this." He turned on his heel and walked away. Naomi saw Daisy shrink into the booth seat. Eyes downcast, Naomi squeezed Daisy's hand. "Don't worry, it'll be okay." She whispered, though she wasn't sure she believed it herself. She needed a plan. And soon. That same day, during the lull between breakfast and lunch, Naomi noticed Daisy linger longer than usual. The girl was staring at her now empty plate with a vacant expression. Concerned that Dale would come out and cause a scene, Naomi gently guided Daisy to the stockroom in the back, away from prying eyes. Among stacked crates of canned beans and boxes of plastic utensils, Daisy finally opened up just a crack. "I live with my aunt," she said, voice quivering. "My mum, she died when I was 5. Dad left before I was born." My aunt never wanted me around. Naomi felt her chest tighten. "I'm so sorry, Daisy. She's got these people," Daisy whispered. "Men who come over, they all scare me. Sometimes they get rough, especially if I don't stay out of sight." Naomi gently placed her hands on the girl's shoulders. "Has anyone called the police?" Daisy shook her head violently. "No. They said if I tell anyone, they'll find me and make it worse. They said they know where I go." A swirl of emotions churned in Naomi's stomach. Rage at these faceless men, sorrow for Daisy, and a fierce, protective urge. She wanted to drive Daisy straight to the nearest shelter that moment. But fear flashed in Daisy's eyes each time she hinted at official help. Naomi didn't want to break the girl's trust, so she offered a compromise. "Look, Daisy," Naomi said softly. "I know you're scared, but I can't let you face this alone. Let me talk to someone I trust, a detective who helps kids in situations like yours. I won't mention your name if you don't want me to, but I need to see if there's a safe place for you to stay." Daisy hesitated. Naomi waited, heart pounding. Finally, Daisy nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "Okay," she whispered, "but please don't let them find me." That night, Naomi tried calling Detective Harris again, but the detective was out on a case. Frustrated, Naomi left a detailed voicemail, careful to omit Daisy's name, but explaining that the girl feared violent individuals were after her. She asked for a call back as soon as possible. When Naomi arrived at work early the next morning, she was met by Sharon's worried face. "Dale's looking for you and he's not happy," she said grimly. Naomi steeled herself for a confrontation. Sure enough, in the office, Dale stood with a stack of receipts, his expression thunderous. "You've been giving away more food than I realized," he barked, slapping the receipts onto the desk. "Mr. Johnson's asking questions. He wants to cut our losses, starting with employees who don't respect the bottom line." Naomi felt a surge of panic. "Dale, I've covered the costs. Every extra plate I paid for out of my tips or my paycheck. The diner hasn't lost anything." Dale let out a humorless laugh. "That might be true on paper, but you're still stirring up trouble. Customers notice you feeding that girl. They start thinking we're some charitable outfit." He narrowed his eyes. "I'm giving you one last warning. Cut it out. If you insist on feeding her, do it off-site. One more slip-up and you're gone." Naomi's breath caught in her throat. She thought of her rent, her bills, her crumbling Chevy. Yet an even bigger wave of concern washed over her Daisy. If Naomi lost her job, she'd lose her daily chance to see the girl and ensure she was safe. She forced herself to remain calm, biting back the anger that threatened to well up. Understood, she finally said, "I won't do anything on diner property." Dale nodded, pleased. Little did he know Naomi had no intention of stopping altogether. She just needed a new plan. The next morning, Naomi arrived even earlier than usual, determined to find a safer way to feed Daisy. She prepared a to-go bag, scrambled eggs, toast and some fruit, then slipped out the back door. The alley behind the diner was dingy and filled with trash cans, but it was out of sight from Dale and the other staff, sure enough, at precisely 6. 15. Daisy appeared at the end of the alley hood, pulled low over her face. Naomi waved her over, pressing the food into her hands. "I can't serve you inside anymore," Naomi explained apologetically, "but you can come here at least until I figure something out." Daisy's eyes welled with gratitude. She nodded, taking the bag. "Thank you," she whispered. I don't know what I'd do without you." Naomi ruffled Daisy's hair gently. "Just promise me you'll be safe. If you feel threatened, come to me right away. Okay." Daisy nodded, devouring the food. As Naomi turned to head back into the diner, she spotted a black sedan parked across the street. She had seen cars there before, as the diner was on a main road, but something about the tinted windows and the way it idled put her on edge. The silhouette of the driver seemed to watch the alley. Naomi's pulse quickened. Could it be one of the men Daisy mentioned? Or was she just being paranoid inside? Naomi tried to brush off her worries. She had a shift to work customers, to greet coffee, to pour. But she couldn't stop glancing out the window, checking to see if the sedan was still there. It was gone by sunrise. Nonetheless, Naomi's nerves were frayed. In the following days, Naomi continued the secret alley routine. Daisy's bruises gradually faded, but her anxiety remained. Some days she looked more hopeful. Other days, she appeared on the verge of tears. Naomi spent each evening calling or texting Detective Harris. But the officer was swamped with another pressing case. Naomi left message after message, praying for a breakthrough. At night, Naomi's dreams were plagued by nightmares. Daisy cornered in a dark room, menacing figures approaching. She always woke in a cold sweat heart, hammering in her chest. One day, unable to bear the uncertainty any longer, she decided to look up Daisy's family on her own. Daisy had mentioned living with her aunt on Rosewood Lane, near the old industrial district. Naomi searched the phone directory, scanning the listings for that neighborhood. It didn't take long to find a listing for S. Reyes on Rosewood Lane. She suspected that might be the aunt's address, though she had no proof. Naomi debated going there in person, but something in her gut told her it was too dangerous. She remembered Daisy's terror. If these people were violent, they wouldn't hesitate to threaten or harm someone snooping around. Instead, she wrote down the address and passed the information along to Detective Harris's voicemail. Her hope was that the detective could do a quiet check, or at least put it on file. A week later, on a grey, drizzly morning, Naomi sat in a mostly empty diner, wrapping silverware. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She slipped into the back hallway. To answer her heart, leaping at the name on the caller ID, Detective Harris, Ms. Carter, came the detective's calm, reassuring voice. I'm following up about that situation you mentioned. I did a little digging. There's no record of a minor named Daisy Reyes, but that might be an alias, or the family might not have filed any paperwork. I can't do much without more details. Naomi felt a wave of disappointment wash over her. I understand, Detective. But can you at least check if that address is safe? I'm worried about the men going in and out. Harris sighed on the other end. I can't just show up without probable cause, but I might be able to do a welfare check if we get a tip that a child is in immediate danger. Are you willing to provide a statement? Naomi hesitated. Daisy had asked her to be discreet, but the girl was clearly in danger. Naomi said, her voice trembling, I'll do whatever it takes to keep her safe. All right. Come down to the station tomorrow if you can. We'll talk, but be cautious. Ms. Carter. If these folks are as bad as you suspect, watch your back. Naomi agreed, a sense of both relief and dread filling her. She was finally doing something proactive, but she worried about Daisy's reaction and about potential repercussions. That evening, Naomi worked the late shift. By the time she closed up the diner, it was nearly midnight. Rain pattered on the pavement as she hurried to her Chevy. She fumbled with her keys, glancing warily at the dark street. Suddenly, headlights flared behind her, illuminating her figure in stark relief. A large, dark SUV roared past, splashing a puddle of water onto her shoes. She jumped back, heart pounding. Had that been a coincidence, or was she being followed? She drove home, knuckles white on the steering wheel, constantly checking the rearview mirror. Every pair of headlights made her adrenaline spike, but no one seemed to be following her. She scolded herself for paranoia, yet the fear lingered. At home, she found a voice message on her apartment answering machine from an unknown number. The message was just the sound of static. No words, no background noise. Still, it unnerved her. She double-checked that her doors were locked before heading to bed. The next day, Naomi woke at the crack of dawn, determined to speak with Daisy before visiting Detective Harris. She arrived at the diner as usual, prepped a small to-go meal, and hurried to the alley at 6:15. But Daisy didn't show. She waited until 7 shorts. Her anxiety escalating. Daisy was never this late. Finally, around 7:30, she caught a glimpse of something at the alley's far end. Daisy's hoodie, except Daisy wasn't wearing it. The tattered garment lay crumpled near a dumpster, soaked by morning dew. Naomi picked it up with trembling fingers. Was this a sign Daisy had been taken? On the hoodie's front pocket was a small scrap of paper, scrawled with shaky handwriting. Don't get involved. Naomi's stomach twisted. She ran back inside, tears pricking her eyes. Something bad had happened to Daisy, and now Naomi was being warned to stand down. She rushed to the payphone near the restrooms, her hands shaking so badly she could hardly dial, and called Detective Harris. She's missing, Naomi whispered when Harris answered. I found her hoodie in the alley with a threat. Stay calm, Harris replied. We can't confirm she's missing yet. But this changes things. I'll send an officer by to collect evidence. In the meantime, if you can give me any more information, you have Naomi hung up. Fear and anger swirling within her. She felt powerless, but she wouldn't abandon Daisy. Not now. Not ever. The next morning, Naomi arrived at the diner with a hollow feeling in her chest. She worried she'd never see Daisy again. She went through the motions, wiping tables, setting up coffee cups, trying to maintain a semblance of normalcy. Around 8:30 a.m., the diner's slow hum of conversation was shattered by the roar of engines. Naomi looked out the window and saw 4 gleaming black SUVs pulling into the parking lot in a tight formation. They parked near the entrance, forming a wall of tinted steel. The din fell silent as patrons and staff glanced nervously at the ominous vehicles. Dale peered through the blinds, muttering curses under his breath. What in God's name? Sharon wiped her hands on a towel, eyes wide. Never seen anything like this in our lot. Naomi felt a surge of dread. This had to be related to Daisy. Her pulse thundered in her ears as the SUV's doors opened. 6 men stepped out, all wearing dark suits and sunglasses, each radiating an air of cold authority. They formed 2 lines, as if escorting someone else out of the vehicles. Then from the lead SUV stepped a tall, imposing figure. He wore a pristine navy suit, a crisp white shirt unbuttoned at the collar. A jagged scar ran along his right cheek. Even from inside the diner, Naomi felt his dominating presence. He surveyed the diner with cool detachment, then gestured for the men to follow him inside. The bell above the door jingled a mundane sound that felt jarringly out of place. All eyes turned to the group as they flooded into the small establishment. A hush fell over the room. One of the men quietly locked the diner door behind them, flipping the open sign to closed. Naomi's heart pounded so violently she thought she might faint. Who were these men? What did they want? The tall man with the scar scanned the diner until his gaze fell on Naomi. His eyes were a chilling shade of grey, and something in his posture indicated he knew exactly who he was looking for. He moved closer, ignoring Dale's stammered questions. Naomi swallowed hard, mind racing through possible escape routes. He stopped a foot from Naomi. A smirk tugged at his lips. "You're Naomi Carter," he said, in a low, gravelly voice. It wasn't a question. Naomi tried to steel herself. "Yes." He nodded. "I believe you've been feeding someone who doesn't belong to you. A girl who's caused me considerable trouble." Naomi's voice cracked as she replied, I don't know what you're talking about." Her eyes flicked to Dale, who looked utterly petrified. Sharon had backed away, pressing herself against the counter in alarm. The man chuckled, but there was no warmth in it. "Don't lie. I know about Daisy. And I know you've been meddling in affairs that don't concern you." Naomi's stomach turned to ice. The presence of these men was suffocating. She forced herself to speak. "She's a child. She needed help. If you've hurt her—" Before she could finish, one of the other men cut her off with a snarl. "Watch your mouth." The leader lifted a hand, silencing his subordinate. "We're not monsters. We simply have a partnership with her aunt. But Daisy doesn't seem to understand how valuable she is to us. She's run off." He fixed Naomi with a piercing stare. "You wouldn't happen to know where she is, would you?" Naomi's fear spiked, but her protective instinct overrode it. She squared her shoulders. "No. She never told me where she lives. She just came here to eat." Silence stretched. Then the man sighed as though annoyed. "That's unfortunate, but I think you know more than you're saying." He waved his hand. 2 of his men fanned out, approaching other employees and patrons. One marched over to Sharon, yanking her phone from her apron. Another cornered Dale, who sputtered protests. The rest of the customers cowered in their booths. The man leaned in close to Naomi, so close she could see the faint pockmarks on his face. "If you find out where she is, you'll tell me. Because if you don't—" He paused, letting the threat dangle. Naomi felt bile rise in her throat. Suddenly the diner door rattled. Someone was trying to get in. A brief flash of tension rippled through the suited men. Then Detective Harris's voice rang out from outside. "Atlanta. PD." "Open up." The man straightened his expression, shifting from intimidation to calm calculation. He signaled to his crew. Quickly, they unlocked the door and stepped aside, as Detective Harris, along with two uniformed officers, strode in. Detective Harris was a tall woman in her 40s, with keen eyes that quickly took in the scene. Her gaze swept over the men in suits, the terrified customers, and landed on Naomi, who stood trembling near the counter. Her jaw tightened. "Is there a problem here?" Harris asked her, tone clipped and authoritative. The tall man offered a cold smile. "We were just leaving. Officer came to speak to a friend." He flicked a glance at Naomi. "But I see our timing might be inconvenient." Harris's eyes narrowed. "I'll need to see some ID from you and your associates." There was a tense beat. The man's lips curled in distaste, but he reached into his jacket, retrieving a sleek leather wallet. He handed over a card. "William Cordell. I'm an associate of Ms. Reyes, the girl's aunt. We were looking for our missing niece. My men can show you their credentials too." The uniformed officers took IDs from the rest of the men. One officer ran them through the radio. Meanwhile, Cordell maintained a veneer of civility. Though his posture bristled with suppressed contempt, Naomi's mind raced. This man had come here with intimidation, tactics, and yet he calmly passed official IDs. Was it all legitimate or expertly forged shortly? The officer whispered something to Harris, who nodded and returned the IDs to Cordell. Her face betrayed reluctance, but she had no immediate grounds to detain him. "We'll be in touch if we have more questions," she said. Stepping aside, Cordell made a show of smoothing his suit. "Yes, detective. Please do. We only want to ensure Daisy is safe." He glanced once more at Naomi. "Have a nice day." With that, Cordell and his entourage filed out, leaving a stunned hush in the diner. Naomi let out a breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. Her knees felt weak, and she steadied herself against the counter. Detective Harris approached her swiftly. "You all right?" she asked, voice low. Naomi nodded shakily. "He said he wanted Daisy. I'm terrified for her." Harris touched her shoulder gently. "I've got some of my people looking into Cordell. In the meantime, are you sure you don't know where Daisy might be?" Tears pricked Naomi's eyes. "No." She disappeared. They left a warning note in her hoodie. I'm scared they have her, or will find her. First." Harris's expression hardened. "We'll do what we can to locate her. But you have to be careful, Naomi. These men clearly aren't above threats or force." The diner remained closed the rest of the morning. Mr. Johnson rushed in demanding explanations. Dale was shaken, having nearly wet himself during the confrontation. Sharon and the other employees were distraught tears mingling with their relief at being unharmed. The customers had scattered, some fleeing out the door the moment the police allowed them to leave. Naomi's mind was a swirl of conflicting emotions: terror for Daisy, anger at Cordell, guilt at having brought this chaos to her workplace. Mr. Johnson, in a rare display of empathy, put a hand on Naomi's shoulder. "We'll figure this out. Let's just hope that poor girl is all right." Dale's reaction was less kind. He cornered Naomi once more. "Look what you did. You've brought dangerous criminals to my diner. We could have all been hurt or killed." Naomi bristled, tears pooling in her eyes. "I was trying to help a child, Dale." He threw his hands up. "I don't care. If Johnson doesn't fire you, I might just walk out. This place has enough trouble without you playing hero." Before Naomi could respond, Sharon stepped up, surprising everyone. "Oh, shut it, Dale. It's not her fault. Those creeps showed up." Sharon rubbed Naomi's back, soothingly. "Girl, you did what you had to do." Dale eyed both women, realizing he was outnumbered. He huffed and stalked away. Johnson decided to close the diner for the day, giving everyone time to recover. Naomi offered to stay and help clean up, but Johnson insisted she go home and rest. She obliged, though she doubted she'd get any real rest. Naomi couldn't go home. Instead, she drove across the city, following a hunch. She recalled Daisy once mentioning an old bus station near the industrial district. If Daisy had run away from home, maybe she'd try to hide in a place she knew well. Naomi parked her Chevy near the boarded-up station, ignoring the uneasy feeling in her stomach as she entered the graffiti-covered building. Inside it was dark and smelled of mildew. Broken glass littered the floor. Naomi crept through the corridors, calling out softly, "Daisy, Daisy, are you here?" Her voice echoed unanswered. Eventually, she had to concede Daisy wasn't there. Or if she was, she wasn't coming out. Naomi left feeling more hopeless than ever. She tried the only other lead she had, the Reyes' address on Rosewood Lane. She parked a block away, creeping toward the house to avoid drawing attention. The small, run-down, single-story home looked deserted. The windows were boarded up from the inside. An overgrown yard hinted at long neglect. Naomi couldn't see any movement. She knocked softly on the door. No reply. She tried peering through a window, but saw only darkness. Her uneasy intuition told her no one had lived here for weeks. Defeated, Naomi returned to her car, glancing nervously around for any sign of Cordell or his men. Seeing none, she drove back to her apartment, tears of frustration blurring her vision. Daisy was gone, and Naomi had no idea how to save her. Late that night, Naomi was jolted awake by her phone's ring. She grabbed it off her nightstand, heart hammering. "Hello." A trembling voice she recognized as Daisy's came through. "Naomi, please help me." Naomi bolted upright. "Daisy, where are you? Are you safe?" The girl sniffled. I'm at a motel near the freeway. My aunt's friends were looking for me. I slipped away, but I don't know what to do. I have no money. Please don't tell the police yet. I'm scared." Naomi's heart twisted. She glanced at the clock, 2:37 a.m. "Okay, tell me which motel I'll come get you." Daisy read off the name, the Blue Lantern. Motel just off I-75. Naomi recognized it as a seedy, notorious place. She jotted down the address. "Stay in your room. Don't go anywhere. I'm on my way." She hung up and hurriedly dressed, ignoring her fear of driving alone at this hour. She only thought about reaching Daisy. On the drive, her phone buzzed again. Detective Harris, no doubt following up. Naomi wrestled with the decision. Should she call Harris for backup? But Daisy had begged her not to. The girl's terror was palpable, and Naomi feared she might flee again if the police showed up. She decided to go alone. Naomi pulled into the Blue Lantern's potholed parking lot, scanning the shabby two-story building. Most windows were dark. She parked near a flickering street lamp, then hurried to the room number Daisy had given. She knocked softly, half expecting Daisy not to answer, but the door opened a crack, revealing Daisy's tear-streaked face. Naomi stepped inside, enveloping the girl in a hug. "Thank God you're okay." The room was bare bones, a single bed with a threadbare comforter, a dingy lamp on a nightstand. Daisy clung to Naomi, sobbing, "I'm sorry, I had nowhere else." Naomi stroked Daisy's hair. "It's all right, we'll figure it out. Look." "Daisy, these men, Cordell and the others, came to the diner. They threatened me, threatened to find you. The police want to help." Daisy pulled away her eyes, red and frightened. "They'll kill me if I talk to the police," she insisted in a rasping whisper. They used to take me places, make me do things." She shuddered, as if recalling a nightmare. "I couldn't tell anyone. If you call the police, they'll know it was me." Naomi's heart cracked at the implication. She embraced Daisy again. tears pricking her own eyes. "I won't let them hurt you." "But Daisy, these men won't stop. They have resources, and they're already after you. We can't hide forever. We need help." "Real help," Daisy sobbed against Naomi's shoulder. "I don't know what to do." Before Naomi could answer, headlights swept across the motel's dingy window. She peered through the gap in the curtains and froze. A sleek black SUV had just pulled into the lot. Headlights glaring, Naomi recognized the silhouette of the driver. Her blood ran cold. It was Cordell. "Daisy, we have to go now." Naomi grabbed Daisy's hand. They bolted out the back entrance of the motel room, slipping into the darkness. Naomi led the girl across the parking lot, staying low behind rows of parked cars. She nearly cried out in relief when she spotted her Chevy. She unlocked the doors as quietly as possible and ushered Daisy inside. Her hands trembled on the ignition. The engine coughed to life, and she immediately switched off the headlights, backing out slowly to avoid drawing attention. Cordell's SUV idled near the office, but in the rearview mirror, Naomi saw the brake lights flick on. They had been spotted. Naomi slammed her foot on the gas, sending the Chevy tearing out of the lot. Behind them, the SUV roared to life in pursuit. Daisy cowered in the passenger seat, tears streaming down her cheeks. "They're going to catch us." "No, they're not," Naomi said firmly. Adrenaline surging, she whipped the Chevy onto the main road, ignoring traffic lights, praying no late-night drivers or cops got in the way. The SUV's headlights loomed behind them at times, gaining ground, at times falling back as Naomi wove frantically through side streets. Finally, after several heart-stopping turns, Naomi spotted a vacant grocery store parking lot, where she quickly doused her lights and pulled behind the building. Her heart pounded as the SUV thundered past, continuing down the road after waiting a few minutes, certain the coast was clear. Naomi breathed again. Daisy hugged her, shaking like a leaf. "What do we do now?" Naomi stroked the girl's hair. "We go to the police." "Right now?" Daisy said nothing, too scared to argue. Naomi dialed Detective Harris and left a frantic message. Then, steeling herself, she drove toward the nearest precinct, hoping they could find a safe place for Daisy before Cordell found them again. They arrived at the precinct just before dawn. The desk sergeant listened to Naomi's frantic explanation, eyes widening when she mentioned Cordell's name. Within minutes, Detective Harris swept into the waiting area, guiding them into a private office. Naomi and Daisy recounted everything. Daisy's abuse, Cordell's threats, the chase at the motel. Harris's face was grim. "We've had suspicions about Cordell and his associates for a while. Human trafficking exploitation. But we've never been able to pin anything on them." She looked at Daisy. "Your testimony could be what we need. If you're willing to speak with us in detail, we can get you into protective custody right away." Daisy trembled, tears slipping down her cheeks. Naomi held her hand. "You'll be safe," Naomi promised. The girl nodded slowly, steeling herself with that. Harris ordered a protective detail. 2 officers escorted Daisy to a secure location, while Naomi gave her own statement. She recounted every interaction, every bruise, every fear. It felt like a huge weight was lifting off her shoulders. Harris assured her they would protect both Daisy and Naomi. Word spread quickly that Cordell was under investigation for a range of charges, including child endangerment and trafficking. The next days were tense. Naomi had to keep her movements discreet. The police warned her that Cordell might lash out if cornered. She took a leave from the diner at Mr. Johnson's insistence. Dale grumbled about coverage, but even he recognized the danger. A week later, everything came to a head when the police raided multiple properties linked to Cordell's operation. They found more than anyone had guessed, a network of exploitation run by Cordell and his associates. Daisy's aunt had been complicit, allowing Cordell to use Daisy as leverage in criminal deals. Multiple arrests were made, and Cordell himself was caught trying to flee the state. Naomi watched the local news coverage with tears of relief in her eyes. She heard Detective Harris's name mentioned among the investigators who cracked the case. The footage showed Cordell being led in handcuffs to a police cruiser, his cold eyes glaring at the cameras. Hard karma had arrived for him, and for all those who hurt Daisy. A few weeks passed in relative calm. Daisy remained in protective custody at a safe house run by a reputable local agency. She underwent counseling, slowly opening up about the horrors she'd endured. Naomi visited whenever she could, bringing small gifts, a plush toy, a box of crayons, offering the girl a piece of normalcy. Each visit, Daisy seemed a bit stronger, her eyes less haunted. Finally, after numerous court hearings, Daisy's aunt was charged as an accessory, and Cordell's entire ring was dismantled. Daisy was placed with a foster family that specialized in caring for at-risk kids, though Naomi and Detective Harris advocated for her every step of the way. Naomi promised Daisy she would remain in her life no matter what. On the day Daisy moved in with her new foster parents, Naomi was there to see her off. The girl clung to Naomi, tears glinting in her eyes, but this time they were tears of hope. "Thank you for feeding me," she whispered, "and for never giving up." Naomi hugged her tightly. "I'm so proud of you, and I'll always be here if you need me." With Cordell behind bars, Naomi felt a cautious sense of safety return to her life. She went back to Johnson's diner. Word of her involvement in helping Daisy had spread throughout the community, and many locals came just to thank her. Some insisted on tipping generously or paying for extra meals to be donated to kids in need. Mr. Johnson, seeing this surge of goodwill, decided to lean into Naomi's compassionate approach. He set up a small donation jar by the counter, labeled Daisy's Hope Fund, with proceeds going to local shelters. Even Dale had to admit, this philanthropic shift improved the diner's image, bringing in more customers. Sharon teased Naomi, saying she was the diner's guardian angel. Naomi just smiled, thinking of Daisy. "I just did what anyone with a heart would do," she said simply. Though relieved, Naomi couldn't shake the feeling that Cordell's associates might be lurking out there, harboring grudges. Detective Harris assured her that the police had cast a wide net. Nonetheless, for weeks afterward, Naomi checked her rearview mirror, jumped at every unknown phone call, and scanned every face that entered the diner. In time, though, the tension eased. Naomi regained the warmth and joy that had defined her before Daisy's ordeal. She poured coffee, chatted with regulars, and occasionally recognized faces from the local news who came to see the hero waitress. Even Dale softened, offering a gruff apology for how he'd treated her. But the biggest surprise came from Mr. Johnson himself. One afternoon, he quietly handed Naomi a sealed envelope. Inside was a small bonus check and a handwritten note. "Thank you for what you did for that little girl. You remind me of the goodness in people. Let's keep making a difference, one plate at a time. Bernard Johnson." Naomi blinked back tears. She felt appreciated in a way she never had before. Perhaps this was her calling all along, to extend kindness, no matter the risk, and to find joy in feeding souls who needed it. Most months passed. The leaves turned golden, and a crisp chill filled the air as autumn arrived in Atlanta. One brisk morning, the diner's bell jingled. Naomi looked up from behind the counter and froze. Daisy stood there, taller, healthier, her hair neatly brushed. Beside her was a social worker, smiling kindly. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Daisy broke into a grin that lit up her entire face. Naomi hurried around the counter, pulling Daisy into a hug. "Look at you. You look so good." She swiped at tears before they could fall. "What are you doing here?" The social worker explained that Daisy had made significant progress and was thriving in her new home. She'd wanted to visit the diner to thank Naomi and share some news. Daisy thrust out an envelope decorated with colorful stickers. "I made this for you," she said shyly. Inside was a handmade card covered in hearts and flowers. The message, scrawled in Daisy's careful handwriting, read, "Thank you for saving my life. I love you, Miss Naomi." Naomi's tears spilled out in earnest. She squeezed Daisy's hands. "I love you too." Always they sat at a booth, chatting about Daisy's school, her therapy sessions, her new hobbies. Daisy beamed as she described making new friends, discovering an interest in art, and finally feeling like she belonged somewhere. Naomi couldn't stop smiling. When Daisy was ready to go, Naomi packed her a to-go box of breakfast. Favorites: scrambled eggs, bacon waffles with extra syrup, free of charge. Of course, Daisy hugged her goodbye, promising to visit again soon. As Naomi watched Daisy walk out, a wave of gratitude and joy rolled through her. The diner felt brighter, the world a little kinder. Time has a way of softening hard edges. The events surrounding Daisy's rescue and Cordell's downfall became local legend. Some folks whispered about how Naomi single-handedly took on criminals, though Naomi always insisted Detective Harris and the precinct did the real work. Nonetheless, the story spread, inspiring others to quietly perform acts of kindness. Johnson's Diner gained a reputation as a place where no one was turned away hungry. With the donation jar in place, they were able to partner with local shelters, providing free meals on certain days to those in need. Naomi spearheaded these efforts, never forgetting what Daisy had gone through. Sometimes Naomi reflected on how different things might have turned out if she'd let fear or policy override compassion. Daisy could still be trapped in that terrible life. The thought sent shivers down her spine, but it also solidified her belief in the power of kindness. Years later, Daisy remained a part of Naomi's life, visiting during holidays and summer breaks. She was thriving in school, her trauma slowly mending under the care of a loving foster family who hoped to adopt her formally. Naomi attended Daisy's middle school graduation, tears glistening as the once quiet girl walked across the stage with her head held high. As for Naomi, she never made it back to college, but she found purpose in her work at the diner with Mr. Johnson's support. She helped design a program that offered part-time jobs to local teens in need, giving them a safe place to learn and grow. She also continued volunteering at shelters. Whenever she handed a plate of hot food to someone hungry, she remembered Daisy's face, her trembling hands, and how one small act of kindness could change a life forever. And that was how a humble black waitress armed with a determined heart rescued a fragile girl from the clutches of a powerful criminal ring. One morning, 4 SUVs had thundered into her diner, intent on intimidation. But in the end, justice prevailed. Cordell faced the full might of the law. Daisy found a path to healing, and Naomi discovered the depth of her own courage. A single act of compassion had triggered ripples that transformed more lives than anyone could have imagined. This story reminds us that kindness, no matter how small, can become the turning point in someone's darkest hour. Naomi risked her safety and her livelihood to help a frightened child, an act of selflessness that uncovered a criminal enterprise and changed Daisy's life forever. Though Naomi faced fear, threats, and job insecurity, her resolve never wavered. In the end, those menacing SUVs outside the diner represented not just danger, but an opportunity to bring hidden crimes into the light and set Daisy free. Thank you for staying with us through this emotional journey. If this story touched your heart, please help us spread its message. Like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more stories that inspire hope, courage, and compassion. Your support means the world to us and helps keep these powerful tales alive. Together, we can continue shining a light in the darkness.